The story of the man who would become the emperor begins in shadow, long before recorded history, on a world we now call Terra. He was not born in the conventional sense, a single soul entering the world. Instead, his genesis was an act of profound and desperate sacrifice. In ancient times, around the 8th millennium BC, humanity was blessed with psykers, individuals of immense psychic power known as shamans. They could guide their tribes, heal the sick, and speak with the spirits of the warp. But they noticed a terrifying change. When they died, their souls were no longer reincarnating into new bodies as they once had. Instead, they were being consumed by predatory entities, stirring within the immaterium, the very same warp demons that would one day plague the galaxy. They saw the doom of mankind approaching, a spiritual extinction. Faced with this existential threat, the shamans of ancient Earth made a pact. They decided upon a final collective act to save their species from the encroaching darkness. Thousands of them, the most powerful and wise psykers of their age, gathered together in a single secret location. There, in a ritual of unimaginable psychic energy, they all willingly ended their own lives at the same moment. Their goal was not simply to die, but to pool their potent souls, their life forces, and their accumulated wisdom into a single, cohesive being. They would not reincarnate as individuals, but would instead merge to form a new, singular consciousness, an ultimate soul, powerful enough to resist the horrors of the warp and guide humanity through the long night they foresaw. This was a gamble of the highest order, an all-or-nothing play for the future of their people. From this immense psychic confluence, a child was born. He was named Neoth, a name that would be one of many he would bear through the millennia. This child was more than human. He was the culmination of countless lifetimes of experience, a vessel containing the distilled might and knowledge of Earth's most powerful psykers. He was born with a consciousness that was already ancient, possessing an innate understanding of the warp, of human nature, and of the great cosmic dangers that lay in wait. He was, for all intents and purposes, a new kind of being, a perpetual who was functionally immortal, destined to walk among humanity, unseen, for tens of thousands of years, a silent guardian watching his species grow, blunder, and evolve across the ages. For millennia, Neoth remained a hidden observer. He walked through the rise and fall of great empires, from Babylon to Rome, from the age of sail to the first steps on Mars. He took on countless identities, a soldier, a scientist, a king, a philosopher, subtly guiding humanity from the shadows, pushing scientific discovery, fostering art, and attempting to steer civilization away from self-destruction. He saw humanity reach for the stars and colonize distant worlds during the dark age of technology, a golden era of progress. But he also saw the hubris and the folly that led to its catastrophic collapse. When the age of strife descended, plunging mankind into millennia of anarchy, barbarism, and isolation, Neoth knew his time as a hidden shepherd was over. He had to step out of the shadows and take direct control. Humanity could no longer be guided. It had to be conquered and united under a single, unwavering will. The Age of Strife was humanity's darkest chapter. Across the galaxy, human worlds were cut off from one another by ferocious warp storms. On Terra itself, civilization had shattered into 1,000 warring factions. Techno-barbarian warlords, mutant hordes, and psychotic demagogues fought over the ruins of a once great world, armed with debased and terrifying weapons from a forgotten age. For centuries, this was the status quo: endless, brutal, and meaningless warfare. It was into this blood-soaked crucible that Neoth finally revealed himself, not as a subtle guide, but as a conqueror clad in gleaming golden armor. He emerged from his hidden laboratories deep within the Himalayan mountains, his goal absolute to unify Terra under his rule and forge the shattered remnants of humanity into a single disciplined force capable of reclaiming its destiny among the stars. His first soldiers were the Thunder Warriors. These were genetically engineered super soldiers, giants of muscle and aggression crafted by the Emperor's bioalchemical genius. They were cruder and more unstable than the Space Marines who would follow, but they were perfect for the brutal task at hand. They were living weapons, designed for shock and awe, capable of breaking the armies of the most powerful warlords on Terra. Leading them personally, Neoth began his campaign of unification. He was a terrifying sight on the battlefield. a radiant figure of immense physical and psychic power, wielding a flaming sword and a will that could shatter minds. He offered every faction a simple choice: submit and join his new imperium, or be utterly destroyed. There was no room for negotiation or dissent. The survival of the species depended on total unity. One by one, the tyrants of old Earth fell before his legions. He crushed the Pan-Pacific Empire, cast down the Indonesian bloc, and purged the mutant horrors from the deep Earth. His armies swept across the continents, bringing compliance through overwhelming force. Yet Neoth was not merely a warlord. He was also a visionary who sought to eradicate the superstitions and dogmatic beliefs that had helped plunge humanity into the age of strife. He preached a doctrine of science, reason, and logic, which he called the imperial truth. All old religions were declared false, their icons torn down and their priests scattered. He sought to build a secular empire, free from the manipulations of faith and the dark gods of the warp that fed upon it, believing this was the only way to safeguard humanity's soul. The final climactic battle of the Unification Wars was fought against the forces of a priest-king who ruled from a fortress atop Mount Ararat. This tyrant commanded a vast army of followers enthralled by zealous faith. In a psychic duel of apocalyptic scale, Neoth confronted this last bastion of old religion and utterly annihilated him, breaking the back of the final major opposition on Terra. With this victory, the unification of Terra was complete. The planet was his, a single world under a single ruler for the first time in millennia. From the ashes of the techno-barbarian states, he founded the Imperium of Man. Terra, now renamed Holy Terra, would be its throne world, the heart of a new galactic empire. The long night was ending, and a new dawn, forged in fire and blood, was about to break. With Terra unified and the Imperium established, Neoth turned his gaze to the stars. He knew that scattered across the galaxy were countless human worlds, lost colonies from the dark age of technology, now isolated and struggling for survival against alien threats and the horrors of the warp. His vision was to reunite all of humanity into a single, glorious empire, stretching from one end of the galaxy to the other. This grand undertaking would be known as the Great Crusade. To lead this monumental campaign, he required a new kind of army, an evolution beyond the brutally effective but unstable Thunder Warriors. Using his own genetic material as a template, he began his masterwork, the creation of the Primarchs, 20 demigod sons, each a paragon of martial and strategic genius. However, disaster struck before the Primarchs could be brought to maturity. In a mysterious event, the infant demigods were stolen from their incubation capsules in the Emperor's laboratory beneath the Himalayas. Through the machinations of the Chaos Gods, his eternal enemies in the warp, the Primarchs were scattered across the galaxy, each landing on a different, distant world. Undeterred by this crippling setback, Neoth used the genetic data he had salvaged to create the next best thing, the Legiones Astartes, the Space Marines. Each of the 20 Space Marine legions was created from the gene seed of a specific Primarch, inheriting some of their father's traits and characteristics. These transhuman warriors would be the tip of the spear for his great crusade, an army of angels to bring his light to the darkness of the void. The Great Crusade began with a thunderous roar. Fleets of warships, the likes of which had not been seen in millennia, departed from the Sol system. At their head was the Emperor himself, accompanied by his legions of Space Marines and the vast armies of the Imperial Guard. They pushed out into the galaxy, a tide of manifest destiny. On every human world they encountered, they brought the imperial truth, offering liberation from alien oppressors and reunification with the mother world of Terra. Worlds that accepted compliance were welcomed into the burgeoning Imperium. Those that resisted, whether they were ruled by alien overlords or stubborn human separatists, were brought to heel by force. The Crusade was a whirlwind of discovery, conquest, and rediscovery. As the Crusade pushed deeper into the galaxy, a series of joyous reunions occurred. One by one, the lost Primarchs were found. Each had grown to manhood on their adopted world, becoming a king, a gladiator, a scholar, or a conqueror in their own right. Neoth welcomed each of his sons back with celebration, placing them at the head of their corresponding Space Marine Legion. With the Primarchs leading their genetic sons, the pace of the Great Crusade accelerated dramatically. Each demigod brought their unique tactical genius to the campaign, and under their leadership, the Imperium expanded at an unprecedented rate. For 2 centuries, it seemed as if nothing could stop the inexorable advance of humanity. It was an age of triumph and glory, the high point of the Emperor's grand design. Despite the unparalleled success of the Great Crusade, shadows were lengthening at the heart of the Imperium. Neoth, the master of genetics, strategy, and psychic power, possessed a critical flaw, a profound inability to be a true father to his demigod sons. He viewed the Primarchs not as family, but as magnificent tools, peerless generals created for a specific purpose. He offered them glory, command, and a central role in his grand design, but he never gave them the simple affection, trust, or emotional understanding they craved. This emotional distance created fissures in their relationships. Some Primarchs, like Robert Guilliman and Rogal Dorn, accepted their role with dutiful loyalty, while others, like Angron and Conrad Kurz, grew resentful and unstable under the immense pressure and perceived coldness of their creator. The most dangerous rift grew between the Emperor and his most favored son, Horus Lupercal. Horus was the first Primarch to be rediscovered and fought at the Emperor's side for decades. He was brilliant, charismatic, and ambitious, earning the trust and admiration of nearly all his brothers. Believing the Great Crusade was nearing its successful conclusion, Neoth made a fateful decision. He announced he was returning to Terra to work on a secret, vital project, the Webway Project, an attempt to create a network for interstellar travel free from the dangers of the warp. He named Horus the War Master, granting him supreme command over all Imperial forces to complete the final stages of the Crusade. This act, meant as the ultimate honor, instead sowed the seeds of tragedy. It placed an unbearable weight on Horus's shoulders and physically separated him from his father's guidance. Isolated from the Emperor and burdened by his new authority, Horus became a target for the insidious powers of chaos. The Chaos Gods, the same entities that had scattered the Primarchs, saw their opportunity to strike at the heart of the Imperium. While wounded on the moon of Davin, Horus's spirit was drawn into the warp, where he was shown visions of a future where his father was worshipped as a god, the Imperial truth a forgotten lie, and the Primarchs cast aside. The Chaos Gods twisted his love for his brothers and his desire for recognition into paranoia and resentment. They convinced him that the Emperor was a tyrant who would discard his sons once they were no longer useful. They offered Horus a different path to overthrow his father and seize the Imperium for himself, ruling as a true liberated master of mankind. Poisoned by these lies and his own festering pride, Horus fell. He renounced his oaths to the Emperor and secretly pledged his allegiance to the dark gods of chaos. The stage was set for the greatest civil war in human history. Horus began to subtly corrupt his brother Primarchs, preying on their individual weaknesses, resentments, and hidden insecurities. He turned Angron's rage, Fulgrim's vanity, and Mortarion's bitterness against the father who had created them. Slowly, painstakingly, he gathered his forces, turning half of the mighty Space Marine legions against the Imperium they had sworn to build. The dream of the Great Crusade was about to die, not at the hands of an alien foe, but through betrayal from within, a tragedy born from a father's failure and a son's fall from grace. The Horus heresy was a cataclysm that tore the fledgling Imperium apart. Brother fought brother, and the galaxy burned. The conflict was a mirror of the Unification Wars, but on a galactic scale and honestly, infinitely more tragic. The very super soldiers created to unite humanity were now its greatest threat. Their genius turned to slaughter and destruction. The war raged for years, consuming countless worlds and trillions of lives. Ultimately, Horus, empowered by the 4 Chaos Gods, laid siege to Terra itself. The final battle for the fate of humanity took place at the Imperial Palace, a desperate, grinding conflict where loyalist defenders held the line against the traitor hordes. In the climax of the siege, Neoth knew he had to confront his fallen son. In a final, desperate gambit, the Emperor teleported aboard Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, for a final confrontation. He fought his way to the bridge, where he found the War Master, now a grotesque vessel for the power of chaos. Horus had utterly forsaken his humanity. In the epic duel that followed, the Emperor held back, still unable to unleash his full power against the son he had once loved. He tried to reason with the man inside the monster, but it was a fatal hesitation. Horus struck a series of devastating blows, mortally wounding his father physically, psychically, and spiritually. It was only when Horus mercilessly killed a lone Imperial Guardsman who stood before him that the Emperor finally understood. The son he knew was truly gone, replaced by a slave to darkness. With a final, agonizing act of will, Neoth gathered all his remaining power and unleashed a psychic blast of pure, annihilating force. He obliterated Horus completely, destroying him body and soul to ensure that the Chaos Gods could never resurrect their champion. But the Emperor himself was dying. His body was broken, his spirit shattered. He was carried back to the Imperial Palace by the loyalist Primarch Rogel Dawn and interred within the arcane machinery of the Golden Throne. This device, originally intended to power his Webway project, was hastily repurposed into a massive life support system. It was a terrible, ironic fate. The man who had preached against superstition and reliance on technology was now trapped within a machine, his near-dead form sustained by arcane science and the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychers. This is the state in which Neoth has remained for 10,000 years. He is not truly alive, yet he is not dead. His immense psychic consciousness acts as a psychic beacon, the Astronomicon, that allows ships to navigate the treacherous currents of the warp. His mind holds the demons of chaos at bay, preventing a Terran reality beneath the palace from swallowing Terra whole. He is the silent, suffering keystone upon which the entire Imperium rests. His dream of a secular, rational empire is dead, replaced by the very thing he fought to destroy, a galaxy-spanning religion that worships him as the God Emperor of mankind. His story is the ultimate tragedy, a tale of a savior who became a prisoner, a father who failed his sons, and a visionary whose dream was corrupted into a nightmare he is forced to preside over for all eternity.